progress.
All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the November 20th, 2024 regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen. I'm First Selectman Colin Mall. I call this meeting to order. Everyone would stand and join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, at this time, I will open the floor to public comment. We'll begin in the room. Is there any public comment in the room? Any public comment in the room? All right. Is there any public comment on Zoom? Any public comment on Zoom? All right. Seeing none, I will move to item 3, approval of the minutes from the November 6th, 2024 regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen.
So this is Kathy Harrington. I make a motion that they be adopted as drafted with just, I think it's 3 very minor corrections. On page 2, under the economic development, alternate appointment, in the second line, if we delete the word "the" before Roger Murray's name. And then on the third line, make selectman, plural, make it selectman. And then on page 3, the second paragraph, the sixth sentence, same thing, make selectman, plural. That's it.
All right, the motion has been made. Is there any discussion? All right, hearing none, call the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Item number 4 is discussion and approval to appoint a full member to the Economic Development Commission to fill the remainder of Jack Henry's term through March 31st, 2025, and appoint Jack Henry as an alternate member of the Economic Development Commission through June 30th, 2028. If you recall, we put Jeff Gerard into the full position last meeting, so the only other person besides the new member is Maria Sylvester. She's been on the longest. Anyone have any questions, concerns? No. All right, I'll entertain a motion to move Maria Sylvester as the full and Jack Henry as the alternate.
So moved.
All right, any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Item number 5 is discussion and approval to appoint Michelle Urch as the new town clerk to fill the remainder of Kathy Dunai's term, effective December 8th, 2024 through January 3rd, 2028. We have both Kathy Dunai and Michelle Urch here, so first and foremost, I want to thank Kathy for her service and wish you the best in retirement.
Thank you.
And Michelle, I want to welcome you. Michelle, I want to thank you for coming out tonight, and if you have anything you want to say real quick to the board?
I don't think so.
All right. Good enough.
This is it. So this is Kathy Harrington. I would make a motion that we appoint Michelle Urch as the new town clerk to fill the remainder of Kathy Dunai's term effective December 8th, 2024 through January 3rd, 2028.
All right, the motion has been made. Is there any discussion?
No, I just fully agree.
All right. Hearing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries.
Congratulations.
All right, item number 6 is discussion on affordable housing required by the state of Connecticut. So last meeting, we discussed a couple things on this in regards to what the commission suggested. And I think we all came to the conclusion that we'd like to see Bill Hawkins take the lead. And Bill is here with us tonight, so Bill, thanks for joining us.
Good evening, everybody.
Hi, Paul.
Good evening.
Bill has confirmed that he can take this on, and if he needs help, we will consider a consultant.
Okay.
Spoke with Bill, so some of the things we're looking or discussed were financial options, viability of using Bridge Street property, look at expanding the housing authority, creating affordable housing zones. And I wanted to see if there was anything anybody wanted to add on or change or discuss while Bill's here before we kind of let him go. And, you know, I'll bring him back a couple meetings and see what we get.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be a moving target
Yeah.
for forever and a day. But I think of those, I would try and identify affordable housing zones. Because you know, that way we could steer them in a direction.
Just a question, should the guidelines that the committee put together go to planning and zoning as one of their directives?
They did have some recommendations on there.
Yeah,
So
I
is
mean,
that what
they
you're
talk
discussing?
about planning and zoning in their recommendations and that. Don't a lot of the things address some issues that they would ultimately have to deal with?
Yes, this is Kathy Harrington, you're right. I think definitely should be shared with them if it hasn't already been. And then it would be up to them to, whether they wanted to take on any of the recommendations or not.
So would that be something we'd want the committee to present to them, or maybe like Bill to discuss at a planning and zoning meeting, the actual recommendations?
I mean, I actually have full confidence in Bill's ability to
Yeah.
present it to them and answer their questions. Bill worked with the Affordable Housing Committee. He was the one that did all the hard, like a lot of the heavy lifting with
Yeah.
us. I mean, of course, I don't want to speak, if he would feel more comfortable having, you know, Kevin Goff with him, he could, or someone else from the commission, but I think Bill could do it himself.
Just, if I could,
Come on, Bill.
yeah, thanks. I just had a couple questions. I want to make sure that I have, it's clear in my mind anyway, what the board's asking, so that I have some direction. So when I spoke with Colin after your last meeting, you know, I wasn't in attendance, but my understanding was to take a look at the town-owned properties. There was a discussion about elderly housing, disabled housing, similar to the Housing Authority. When Kevin Goff was here in August or September, whenever it was, he had some information on that, and you know, there was a map of the Bridge Street property. There's some property around the Housing Authority. So from my conversation with the first selectman was, you know, take a look at these properties. There's other town-owned properties as well, and if the town wanted to go down the road of talking to the Housing Authority about possibly expanding or maybe creating a new housing authority, look at the funding for that sort of thing. Where does it come from? How would that take place and to actually get something going? So the research part of it, and coming back and reporting to the commission, to the Board of Selectmen rather, you know, I could certainly do that. You know, that's well within my wheelhouse. Other items, there was a lot of recommendations from the Affordable Housing Committee. A lot of them had to do with planning and zoning, as Mel was pointing out. In terms of creating zones or looking at zoning regulations, you know, a lot of that, well, I guess it depends on how I prioritize things, but I probably would need help through a consultant or somebody to at least work with me to take on the lion's share of the project and under my direction. If the Planning and Zoning Commission is interested in going down that road. So I guess, so my takeaway was the first piece that I talked about, take a look at that, report back to the commission on how something like that, or to the board, on how something like that may take place. And then for the other recommendations, you know, maybe I'd be the one to speak with the Planning and Zoning Commission about those and see what they have an appetite for. And then I think with that, and if the other part, if we want to move forward with Housing Authority or, you know, something else, or private developer, I'd probably need more help with that. But at least the initial piece, you know, the background, the research, looking into it, I can certainly handle. But I'm not sure if there was, you know, anything more or something I'm missing as far as the direction from this board.
One thing I'd add to you, can you walk on water? It's a tough issue.
Well, certainly housing's an important issue across the country. But I do think it's a good first step to start looking at it. And I understand the desire to look at town land because we control it. The thing about creating zones, you know, Pete, to your point, we could create housing overlay zones. It doesn't mean a developer or a property owner is going to take advantage of it. And if we're subject to Connecticut General Statutes 8-30G, a developer could, you know, propose it somewhere else where that zone may not be. What a zone does would provide an incentive, or it would tell possible potential developers, if you're thinking of coming to Suffield and there's a property in this area, we are encouraging or at least thinking about more density or whatever the case may be in this area. It's not necessarily, which I guess in a way is directing it, but it's not, you know, someone wants to do something over here that they can't, you know, they certainly could. But these are discussions that I would have with the Planning and Zoning Commission, because ultimately the zoning regulations are under their purview.
So what I hear is that you would present the report to them with the recommendations, and if planning and zoning is interested in looking at them, then that's when you would probably need some help and assistance.
Depending on what it is, yeah, absolutely. If it's creating zoning regulations, you know, a design guideline book for potential housing options, what that might look like, you know, those sorts of things, I think I would need some help
Okay.
putting together.
That sounds good.
But I guess the first step is presenting it to the Planning and Zoning Commission, if that's what the board is suggesting.
So you're also suggesting that if you get down the line a little bit, that you're gonna need some consulting help coming in?
I think it's very likely, yeah.
So that's something we should take a look at in the meantime too,
Mhm.
because that's gonna take some time, I'm sure.
Yeah, and I won't know really what's needed until we start, you know, talking about these things with planning and zoning for those pieces.
I'm partly bringing it up because we're gonna be getting into the budget process in the near future,
Yeah.
so that would just be something to keep in mind.
Yep, no, that's a good point.
Do we want to look at the recommendations at some point, maybe for the next meeting for planning and zoning, and if, depending on, I don't know if we're all gonna agree with what these recommendations are.
I think that makes sense before Bill goes to P and Z. It probably makes sense to take a look at that as a board.
Yeah, because then we can write a letter of support for the ones that we agree on, or
Yep.
the majority thinks
Okay.
he should even discuss at planning and zoning. So maybe we'll do that for the next meeting.
And that would make Bill's job easier and clearer as
Yeah.
to what to present.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, and that would, I think, hold some weight with the Planning and Zoning Commission as well.
Okay.
Like, well, the Board of Selectmen look at these, they see, you know, A, B, C, we like, you know, the other ones maybe the back burner for now, or whatever the case may be.
And just know that for some of us, even though I sat on that commission, we might need your help on some of them.
Sure.
Because some of them seem very similar, but they're different.
Yeah. There's a lot of subtle nuances
Yeah.
in this stuff. But in the meantime, you know, obviously I can attend any meeting that you need me to when you're gonna discuss it. And I'll start working on at least the research piece, as the board was talking about earlier, town-owned land, housing authorities, financing, and that sort of thing. Because I've not really looked into that too deeply.
I'm just curious, what kind of consultants do this kind of work that you're thinking about?
There's a handful of, you know, sort of specialized planning consulting groups out there. Planometrics is one that we've used a lot. He helped us put together the affordable housing plan,
Okay,
Glenn Chalder. There's a couple of others that come.
so this is something they do as a living?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so I'll add this to our next agenda, we'll take a look at those zoning recommendations, and we'll get back to you on that.
Okay,
All right,
that's great.
thanks for your
Bill.
time, Bill,
Thank you.
appreciate you coming out tonight.
Thanks, Bill.
Have a good night.
Have a good night.
No,
All right, so a little homework for us for next meeting.
Homework.
I didn't think of it, would it pay to have Bill to hear our discussion about it?
Yeah, I'll invite him to the next meeting. All right. Item number 7 is update on delinquent taxes and tax sale liens and foreclosures. So I just wanted to provide you guys a update from project we started basically last year. Took a look at the 1.5% of taxes that are uncollected at some point last year. And we realized that we weren't collecting these taxes as a town. And we compiled a list, which you guys have on your computer, of all the outstanding property taxes. I also gave you the letters that our town attorney sent out to all of these taxpayers or non-taxpayers, which you can see was well into the 200 or 140 letters. And we mailed those out this summer. We compared some spreadsheets. We compared the spreadsheet from May of delinquent taxes, and then the spreadsheet from I want to say October, and we had over $300,000 in collected taxes that we haven't got. And you can see that some of those go all the way back to 2009, and that's when that falls off the suspense list after 15 years. So I don't have any information from beforehand, but we I would say we did pretty well with collection. We're gonna put out a final notice, demand notice, just to give everyone a fair shot to try to set up payment or pay one more time. And then we're gonna proceed with tax lien sales, which would basically, we're gonna sell the liens and people are gonna buy them. And then that process, we get our money and that third party, they deal with whatever the foreclosure process is. So if you guys have any questions for me, happy to answer what I can.
I was curious about, there were some that were like $5, I mean, I'll say under $10 or some very small. Do those just get written off or?
No, so there was some, I have to ask the town attorney, but there was a number we took that we didn't send the letters out to, and it might have been like under $25.
Okay.
But there's, some people probably just didn't even know that they owed that.
Right.
Just
That was
Yeah.
my.
this letter
and it
was a
so
reminder
nominal in
to
some
them.
cases.
Yeah, but, I think we're recouping all the money that town deserves, and I think that the 98.5 of taxpayers who are paying, it makes it more fair. Why shouldn't everyone pay their taxes?
With the 300,000 that we additionally collected this summer, what's that put the percentage at, do you know?
I want to say it was like just over $1 million, if I remember correctly, so you're talking about 20%. I want to say it was like 1.5. Of course, some of those are defunct HOAs, so we're still working on how we're gonna handle that moving forward. So I think that brings that number, the real number, to somewhere between 700,000 to 900,000. So we're talking about 33% collected. And moving forward, we're gonna create the process where if you have outstanding taxes after 2 years, you're going to get these demand letters. You will be put on, notice that you're for the tax sale liens.
So, this is Kathy Harrington, just so I understand. If somebody owed taxes for more than 15 years, they fall off the list and we can't collect it.
As far as I understand, because the only list I've received from the tax collector goes back to 2009, which is 15 years.
Okay. And so, nothing's been done to collect these? Maybe
Beyond
so.
a letter
No
asking,
enforcement?
but there hasn't been any enforcement.
Right.
And so there's a line item in our budget that's, all the uncollected taxes, and I think last year it's at around $250,000.
Okay.
But that could easily just be people from last year that didn't pay.
Okay, as opposed to cumulative.
Correct.
Okay. And so, our town attorney sent out letters.
Yeah, we had some discussion over the past 2 years of how this was gonna get accomplished, and we didn't really see too much movement, so we thought it was best to put the town attorney in charge.
And then we had to pay his attorney's fees, I take it, to
We
do
did.
this?
Yep, we did. I think our hopes was that we could have these letters come out of the tax collector office, but we just didn't get to that point, and I didn't want to keep waiting, kicking the can down the road, so I had the tax collector send all the information to the town attorney. Town attorney then compiled all that and created the 140 plus letters you see on your computer. And then we're gonna do this again, so we're gonna do an update, then resend however many letters out. But as it stands, we're gonna be doing this every year through our town attorney.
And not through the tax collector's office?
Currently, yes.
Anybody else has questions? Yes, sorry.
Sure.
Thank
So, the $300,000, so am I understanding we received $300,000 in response to the letters that went out?
As far as we can see on the spreadsheets, yeah, and there was a few emails I gathered from the tax collector where they stated that because of letting this person know that these letters were going out, that the payment came in.
Okay.
Which, by the way, took us hours to compile. I want to thank the intern who did that for us.
Okay.
But there's, all right, so there's a number of folks that have significant amount of funds due the town, 25, 45, 55, And as I'm just looking at a random one here, and I'm not gonna mention anybody's name or anything like that, because that's not the point of the comment. But, so the tax due is in this particular example, $29,411.16. The interest is $26,076.59. So the interest adds significantly, and some of them, the interest is more for the taxes due that have been due. The longer they've been due, the more the interest builds up, so that I saw one, let's say, for example, the tax due from 2012 or so is $4,000, but the interest on that is something along $7,000.
Yeah, I think we're doing a disservice by not demanding this sooner rather than later. And I think if we're gonna use the argument that we're gaining interest off these people, I don't think that's proper or
Right.
appropriate.
No, folks are not paying for different reasons, but there's a person here who's not paid taxes, I don't know about 2023 or 2024, but certainly from 2013 up to the present, or up to 2022. And it strikes me so that that person very likely is someone who ran into financial difficulties back around 2012, apparently. And perhaps if something had been done earlier in the process to try and address that, when the amount due is $4,000, whether it's a payment plan or something, okay? But now, where it's $45,000 due, now that's a pretty significant problem.
Yeah, it's a big hole for them to get out, that they're probably
Exactly.
not going to get out of, unfortunately. Yeah, I mean, basically, we're trying to establish a policy now on how we're gonna proceed moving forward. Because, I mean, how many people are gonna be able to pay the $45,000
Right.
just to come out? And, we're just talking about the $45,000, establishing a policy moving forward. I mean, we've never had one, we've never gone after anybody's past due taxes beyond sending, I guess, a letter or two out demanding them. But,
Do we know, I don't say talking this stuff, do we know, like, use an example that you did, Jerry, if those people had paid something and reduced it to that figure?
In the example that I saw, I didn't look that closely to look at that,
Okay,
but from a quick glance at each year, it appeared that each year the tax had not been paid.
okay. Do we have some situations where people have been paying towards it, they can't pay the whole thing at once, and they work with the tax collector to work on a plan to pay over time?
Yeah, there are situations like that, and I don't think that the names you see on the list fall within that situation.
Okay, okay.
And for anybody on this list who got letters from the town attorney, if they were able to and agreeable to a payment plan, the town would enter that with them, correct?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. We want to give people the opportunity
Mhm.
to pay, or at least show payment. I mean, why would anyone pay if there's no consequence to it, right?
Yeah.
If you don't pay your mortgage after 6 months, you're gonna lose your house. If you don't pay your taxes after 6 months, apparently, nothing happens, So we're creating a behavior that isn't fair to everyone else that's paying the 98.5% of us.
So your goal is to have a policy in place moving forward so that each year it would be less and less of an issue, and less people we're sending it out to, right? Because we'd be taking action along the way.
Essentially, yeah, if you haven't paid after 2 years, we think that's a fair amount of time, then we'll establish a policy where we will put the lien for sale. And
Lean
this
percent.
isn't something new, other towns do it.
Mhm.
They have big tax lien sales in Hartford, and they all go up and they get auctioned off, and that is what it is.
I mean, I would even suggest that waiting 2 years to get something rolling is too long, because it just makes it more difficult for the person the sooner you establish contact with the person to try and find out what's going on, what can be done, the more likely that person can find a way to deal with whatever the situation is and move forward in a positive way, rather than get stuck as you're trying to sell your home with a gigantic tax.
So if I create a policy, I can bring it to you guys and we can talk about whether the time frame. How does that sound?
Yeah. Also, in terms of, so you were saying we could sell the lien to a third party. And what is the thought process in terms to do that rather than just foreclose ourselves on our lien?
Because talking to the town attorney, it's a lot of work to do that part, and like, there's all these time frames that he mentioned, 90 days for this, then you get another 90 days for that. And so if we're doing 140, that we just don't have the manpower
Yep.
or the hours to do that.
Okay.
And even just getting to this point, it's a stretch for my office and the town attorney who's busy with other things to be handling this. And ideally, a policy will establish who's going to do this.
Although it's nice to get $300,000, that.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
we should have a surplus in that line item, although some of the money was collected in the past fiscal year. There's still, anything now is for this fiscal year. Anyone have any other questions, concerns? I want to thank the town attorney for taking this on, this has been a lot of work.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure it belongs in that, in his hands right now.
Yep.
I just, myself personally, this is Kathy Harrington, I just feel like I need some time to kind of absorb
Yep.
all of this. Because of the information we sent it was so vast, that spreadsheet, honestly, I was like, it can't be that there's really $1 million uncollected in property taxes. Like, I thought I was misreading it, but I wasn't.
No.
And so I need to sit and think on the proposals for the policy and what would make sense if we're going to be able to, if we're going to issue one. And I appreciate you updating us on this.
Yeah,
Would there be any value in putting a part-time person in the tax collector's office that just deals with delinquent taxes?
I don't think so, I think the tax collector could just do it.
You may be right, I don't know that, I don't know enough about the number of people in the office and what would be involved, but it seems like you're saying that the attorney shouldn't be able to do it, and it's a lot of time on his part, and it's costly. I'm just asking if there's an employee who can be, just be one of the primary assignments.
If I might, Mel, maybe a better question would be, did the tax collector ever say they would do this or wouldn't do this, or why this wasn't being done if they didn't have time to do it? Did they say they didn't have time to do this?
There wasn't a time issue,
Okay.
I think there was a issue of potentially taking people's homes.
So a choice not to do it because of the end result?
Which is why we have the town attorney doing it.
I think it's personal.
And believe me, I don't think any one of us wants to see any one of our residents lose their homes. We don't want to go down this road. This
No.
isn't fun. Nobody wants to do this. But it's also not appropriate for us to have over $1 million due in past property taxes either.
And it's not fair that everyone else is paying their taxes, and we have others that aren't.
So again, I feel like this is a lot to sit on and think on.
Yeah. I look at $1 million and I say that was our increase to our budget last year, so had we had that million, it could really offset that increase with that money that's sitting there. And every year, if that's 1.5% of our collected taxes of $42 million, then, you know, that's $400,000 every year for the next fiscal year that we can plan on having to offset something, so, which is usually a big capital project. So put that into perspective.
It's a fire truck. $1 million is a fire truck.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it would be useful, you mentioned the issue about defunct HOAs. I think it'd be helpful to do whatever's gotta be done to get that off the books, because at least as I'm understanding you, there's on paper something due that's not really going to be due or not going to be collected. So whatever mechanism needs to be used to just get that off the books so it's not being carried, so we can identify specifically and with precision what is the amount that's not being paid. And it's not just homeowners, I mean, there's
Oh, yeah.
businesses.
Yep.
So, also potentially would like the tax collector come in and talk
Kathy,
about
I
this?
can't hear you.
I'm sorry, I would think it would also be appropriate possibly to have the tax collector come in and talk about this with us. I mean, if this falls within
Yeah.
that purview, right?
Yeah, it
I
does.
would have thought that this would have been done.
Something I can,
And if we're gonna discuss a policy, I do think the department who would normally be in charge of it should have input in part of the discussion.
okay,
That
Right.
makes sense, yeah.
all right, so I'll reach out. I'll put this on a future agenda item.
Okay.
I appreciate the feedback. Anyone else have any other questions? No? Okay. All right, moving on to item 8 is discussion of charter recommendations. So you guys received all the recommendations from the Charter Commission, and their final recommendation was to make the town treasurer position an appointed position rather than elected position. Attorney Donnelly gave you some steps for proceeding forward, which is the next one's a public hearing from our board in 45 days, which was from, I believe, so the Friday before our last meeting, so we're gonna have to schedule it for mid-December here. But we need to figure out what we want to do, so we have options. I just want to say that while I appreciate the work that the Charter Revision Commission did, I look at some of the points that they made, and I find that those points either don't necessarily make sense with their recommendation, or that those points actually strengthen the need to make it appointed rather than elected. And I'll go through it from my perspective, and then let you guys, I'll open the floor to discussion afterwards. But, I mean, when they talk about accountability, I think you would have better accountability if that person was a hired position, and there was, the problem with some of the elected positions are that who are they accountable to, like, on a day-to-day basis? Like, if I need somebody to go after unpaid taxes, they choose not to, then what happens? Independence from elected officials. What about independence from their friends or local residents that they know and want to do favors for? So there's no independence from the electorate. Higher level of service, I would think that the higher level of service would be provided by somebody who could get fired and is a hired position, because you can't fire an elected official. It's not broken. I'm not sure who said that, but obviously they've never managed anything, because status quo isn't always good in a management or operational system. Like, you're always looking to do things better, make things better, improve on things. And so I question that one. And lack of support for change. And so I think I mentioned it last time, based off the number of people who came, which we determined was minimal and probably isn't representative of Suffield. At most, they had 15 people show up to one meeting. That's less than 1/1000th of our population and less than 1/100 of our registered voters. So that's not a good sample size. The argument that the treasurer has the most, like, deals with all the money, well, the money filters in from somewhere to begin with. And so that begins at the tax collector position. So, like, they could walk out with all the money before it even makes it to the town treasurer. That argument is moot. And I don't understand how we pick one position over all three positions. And so, that's where I'm coming from. I think we need to look into this further. And I kind of want to see what your opinions are. We'll go from there.
Just a question, is that the town treasurer bonded?
Yes, they're bonded now.
I'm sorry,
They are bonded.
they are bonded, okay, so,
Insurance already covered most of it, so like, they were bonded for a smaller amount, and there's a part of the insurance, I guess the criminal part, which covers any other losses,
okay.
yeah.
So
So they're
whoever,
basically covered.
however we decide to, whether we appoint or elect a treasurer, they'll be bonded, and there's insurance covered.
Yes. Anyone else have any comments or questions?
Yeah, call me old-fashioned, but I'm of the opinion we should continue to elect people. You're concerned about people talking to their friends or making favor of their friends. You can also have the problem where you get an elected official or appointed official who's beholden to this board. Now, it has to do whoever's sitting in these seats. So you can have that side of the problem too.
Well, how often does that happen? I mean, let's pick a
How
few
often
positions.
does it happen the other side?
Well, look, let's pick the fire chief. How often is he beholden to this board? How
How often what?
is he beholden to this board? What about the DPW director, our Parks and Recreation director? You can't, if you want to use that argument, we don't tell our directors all the time what they can and cannot do.
But I don't see any problem with elected them.
Okay.
My point is, I don't want to say it's been the way we've done it, and for the most part, it's worked. I can't go back forever, but, we had lots of different people in those positions. We have a lot of different people in your position, some very effective and some less effective. And
One, an appointed position allow us to pick the most qualified and effective person?
not necessarily. I've seen political appointments for positions. No, I don't agree with that. That's the theory.
Well, I would say the odds are higher because you're looking at their resume and
Yeah.
hiring them.
But to your point, and I don't disagree with you, but the people of the town, when we've said, let's have a town manager, have resoundingly said no to that. To the point where you want to hire someone who's a professional and that's what they do for a living, and they've all said no. So there's kind of that, in my mind, the idea is there that they want them all to be elected. Now, what I personally think we should do is put them all in the same question. Do you want all these three to be, do you want all three of these positions to be elected or appointed, or however? That way, because you can't really have an appointed tax collector and an elected treasurer, like, I don't think it will work. So I think if you make the question, do you want them elected or do you want them appointed?
So you think though that maybe the question should be posed still, regardless of the perception?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah, because I feel like, I think we all have a pretty good idea of what people like in town, but there's 5 of us, and there's 15,000 people in town. Not that 15,000 people come to the town meeting, but they might,
Yeah.
And that's small town democracy right there.
I agree.
So, Jerry Mahoney, I think it was probably clear from my comments at the last meeting, I did not feel that the positions were analyzed consistently. It wasn't clear to me why the treasurer position the recommendation for that was to be appointed and the others were recommended to be elected. One of the bases offered was to keep the tax collector and town clerk accountable to the voters by virtue of being elected. And as a general principle, I'm absolutely in favor of that, and that is a primary reason that I have opposed going to a town manager position, because when by keeping a first selectman position, the people of the town every 2 years have the opportunity to vote on that person's performance. The difference is we've had a lot more contested elections for a first selectman than we have for town clerk or tax collector. I'm not positive, but I think maybe in the past 10 or 15 years, we've had, I think, one contested election for those two positions. So if you have contested elections, then you have accountability to voters. If they're not contested elections, one vote in favor of that person puts the person into office. And so is that really accountability to the voters? And if it's not, then who are they accountable to? And out of all the reasons offered, the question of accountability to me was the most important. I do want to say the assertion that you could get a higher level of service from a town resident than from an employee who does not live in town. I just want to note for the record, in particular for town employees that do not live in town, that I don't agree that that's a valid assertion to make. We have fantastic employees who live in town. We have fantastic employees who are not living in town.
I'll point out that probably a majority of our employees live outside of town.
Okay.
I'm sorry,
I would point out that a majority of our employees probably live outside of town. So are we not providing a higher level of service because of that? So I get what you're saying.
I don't know if it's correct, but in response to that, I would think the town clerk and treasurer and the three positions have a broader connections with a larger percentage of people than most employees. Not all of them, but with many of them. I mean, the tax collector's contacting everybody in town. Town clerk's doing that. The treasurer's not. That's probably a more distinct level.
Julie?
Yeah, so Kathy Harrington, I served as a liaison to the Charter Revision Commission, and I didn't have a vote, I had a voice but no vote. And I think they did a great job. I think they worked really hard. From the beginning though, I thought my thinking was more aligned with like Pete's thinking, which was I felt like we should put this to the residents, and the residents should tell us between all three. And I do see the validity in treating them more consistently, because I think that there are reasons to treat them all the same and evaluate them the same. So I do like the suggestion of putting it all into one question. So.
Yeah, I don't view this as a win or lose. It's here's the facts, here's what we know, here's what we came up with. Do the residents want it, or do they not want it, as such?
Right.
Yeah.
In one response to your comments about the last 10 or 15 years, whatever it's been, there's been one candidate for each. But that's by choice that we've practiced. That doesn't have to be that way. It's kind of fallen out that way. It wasn't that way when I first got into town. But it became a practice 10 or 15 years ago between the parties.
Well, we have our new town clerk soon to be here, and I'd like to invite her up just to see what her opinion is, being that she's worked in that office for, is it 9 or 10 years?
It'll be 10 in March
10 in March, all right.
as the assistant.
So, let's say we didn't pick you as the next town clerk. How would that make you feel? What would you do?
I truthfully would probably look for another job. It would be unfair that I'm certified, I've been doing the job for almost 10 years, and for me to have to train someone who doesn't know anything would be unfair. I would be essentially running the office without the pay, the compensation, the title, which I don't think is fair to the assistant. And on the other hand, when you say the accountability, somebody new may not decide they want to work all the time. This could be a second job. It could be a supplement to their income. There's nobody being held to work 5 days a week, 35 hours a day, 35 hours a week.
35 hours a day?
That's a long day. I'm not working
I
that.
can't wait to get you started.
You're talking like a lawyer.
No, but to me, that was always, one of my fears when, as election time came around, what if they put somebody up against Kathy? That somebody won. Now, we have somebody who has no knowledge, no experience. As the years have gone by, in the 10 years, we've been tasked with more jobs, with more details, with more rules. And for me, it's very hard to think that somebody could just walk in one day and be like, hey, I'm town clerk.
Yeah, I think that would be for anybody in your position if somebody was elected ahead of you. Like, I wouldn't want to work and train somebody that I've been there for that long, I'm certified.
No.
Now you're getting paid more for something you have no idea what you're doing. So let's pretend Michelle wasn't here, right? So then what would happen? We wouldn't have somebody in the pipeline.
What if I didn't live in Suffield?
That's true. What if you didn't live in Suffield?
What if I was a resident of Windsor Locks and I couldn't be put into the position?
That's a good point too.
We had someone, Kathy would know better, 15 years ago, there was somebody who was in the town clerk who had no background.
And they were elected. How'd that work out?
Filled a position.
I'm sorry?
He filled a position.
Yeah,
How'd that work out?
not well.
Okay.
A couple of months,
Yeah.
right? If I recall.
And
A couple of
so,
months.
To be the assistant director, do you have to get your certification at some point?
It is part of the job description.
Okay.
You have 3 years.
but it's not
It is not
required.
mandatory by state, does not require you to do it.
Correct, so
The
you,
town has it in our union contract,
so if you're elected, you don't need to go do it.
right?
Well, but it's in the contracts.
For the union
For the
employees,
union.
for the assistants.
An elected position isn't part of the union, you're not beholden to anything.
No, I understand that. I'm just-
Yeah.
Yeah, so you don't have to, as an elected official, you do not have to.
So you could ride out your 4 years and never become certified.
But we can also, if that's a question, we can put that in a requirement. Why
into
can't
the
we
charter.
add that?
I would have to talk to the town attorney to see if we can
Yeah.
do that, if it's not a requirement
Well,
by statute.
I just asked as a question, why can't we add that, and for the town treasurer?
Just remember though, the certifications take 3 to 5 years to get, so by the time you're done with your certifying, your time is up.
Paying for the person to go to
Yeah.
school.
Well, but I'd rather have it in there and not have it in there, because I think you raise a good point. Or we could get somebody who doesn't have it.
Which is partly the reason why I'm saying I think an appointed position is better than an elected position. So it's safe to say that you think an appointed position is probably best, at least from your perspective,
I
in
do,
the town
the
clerk office.
assistant position, yes. I
And
do.
you're going into that
Right,
position.
and I'm going into it. I
Yeah.
mean, do I want to run for reelection and have the risk of losing my job? No, and then knowing somebody could go in there and not, after everything I've worked to create and make better, to have somebody go in and just be like, oh, I don't know what I'm supposed to do.
Because I think you would find very few people whose resume would go up against Michelle's for the town clerk position, right? So
I would say another
Yeah.
certified town clerk, that would be, but most of them are probably happy in their jobs and don't live in
Don't
Suffield,
live in
so
Suffield.
can't work.
It's really only probably 3 certified town clerks that live in Suffield, right?
Yes,
That we know of, yeah.
4,
4, there's 4.
yes,
Right.
myself, Kathy, Erica,
Oh, yeah.
and Anna Posniak.
There we go.
So, Michelle, I'm sorry, I can't remember who is the other person that works in the office?
Erica,
Erica. Do you you happen to know, is Erica a resident of town?
She is.
She is, okay. I mean, it strikes me that for the tax clerk position in particular, as currently set up, it just strikes me, so as people are applying for positions in the tax clerk's office,
Town clerk?
I'm sorry, what are,
Tax.
I'm getting all mixed up. Town clerk. So there's an incentive by the town to hire people that are town residents because of the fact that the town clerk is an elected position, has to be an elector. And I'm just wondering, can that, if someone, let's say, is not a resident, applies for a position, doesn't get the job, it just seems like that is a potential problem, liability problem.
Is there anything else you'd like to add, or just, I appreciate your time for coming out tonight. Thanks.
Appreciate your perspective, thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well, we do need to move this forward to a
One-
public hearing.
One concern I have is, that maybe 20 years ago, that there was a town charter revision committee put forward, and the Board of Selectmen pretty much killed the bulk of the proposals, and it really left a sour taste. I mean, in a lot of people's mind, and it became hard to find people who would run that charter revision committee, because in that particular case, they were talking about a town manager, so it was very time consuming. And I'm not saying this one wasn't, but, I mean, if this is their recommendations, we should put it forward and let the town vote on it.
And that's what we have to determine, whether we want to just put that one recommendation forward, or change it and put all three forward. And I'm saying I'm in favor of putting all three forward, and just letting the residents decide based off of the information we have.
Can we add, though, the requirements? Could we require that to be, that the town clerk be certified?
Well, I'll ask the town attorney, I'll bring him next meeting, and we can get that question answered.
Is the tax collector certified?
Yeah. Yes.
They are too.
And that also takes 3 to 5 years.
So we're gonna have the town attorney at the next meeting?
Yeah,
So we can
that's
discuss
December
this.
4th, yeah.
Great, because I know that there's provisions that says that we can send it back to the charter revision with recommendations, but I don't know that that's required.
Okay.
You know,
Yep.
if we're just going to expand or amend a recommendation, I would wanna make sure we do the right procedure
Okay.
for that.
All right, well,
Yeah.
I will bring the town attorney. I think we need to really think about what we want to do for this next meeting too, because then we'll have to call a public hearing for
Mhm.
this.
How much time do we have to do the public meeting? Is there a time frame?
So it was 45 days from
45
when we
days.
got the report, which we got
Are
on
we
the,
running up on that?
November
The holidays?
1st. We got it on November 1st.
We're running up on that,
Right.
which is why it's been on the agenda now
Okay.
twice, and it'll go on a third time. All right, anyone else have anything else to add for this?
No.
All right. I will move on to item 9, which is public comment. Is there any public comment in the room? Victoria, if you just state your name and address for the record, please.
Yes. Copes, 223 Hickory Street. So I have 3 easy questions. 2 of them on the affordable housing. What is the state's requirement, percentage requirement for affordable housing? I wonder if you guys know that.
I just want to let you know that we won't respond to the questions during public
Oh,
comment. But you're
okay.
more than welcome to email them to us, to me.
Oh. I can't ask questions?
It's not a back and forth,
Yeah.
it's just public comment.
Okay. Well then, I guess the comment I have is, I want to know, what is the state's requirement, then what is Suffield's,
The requirement is 10, Suffield's is 6.
okay, thank you. And then, just to follow up on the, delinquent taxes, tax sale liens and foreclosures, I'd like to know if Hickory Street, 301 Hickory Street falls under that issue.
Happy to answer your questions
Okay,
another day. Yep.
all right,
Just send me an email.
okay.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment in the room?
Yes, as your outgoing, Kathy Dunai, your former town clerk or outgoing, any good department head does come up with a succession plan, and I'm very pleased tonight that you enacted the succession plan. I am happy to leave the office knowing that it is in very capable hands. Michelle, being born and brought up in Suffield, has her pulse, her finger on the pulse of this community. She knows the town, she knows the layout, and she's incredibly competent, as is her assistant, Erica, who comes to us as a former legal assistant as well. So I'm really pleased that I get to exit and this department is in total capable hands. You know, sometimes we have to work 200% harder to make sure that our decisions are 100%. And these two girls have stepped up to the plate to make sure that elections or anything that we are faced with, if we can't find a decision for them, we forward them to people who actually can help them out. And our office has become very helpful and very communicative to the community. So we really have tried that. As I exit, I have also offered my services to the town. I've worked in a number of departments in the many years I've been here. So until they hire someone, I've offered my services to come back to pitch hit. If things get tough, I'll come in and help. And also I'd like to thank the Board of Selectmen for the support you've given to me over the years. I appreciate the level of communication that you've been able to reach out, ask me questions. I've reached out to you for questions, and I truly appreciate it. So thank you very much.
Kathy,
Thank you,
thank you.
Kathy.
Thank you, Kathy. It's been a pleasure to interact with for years. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
everything.
Is there any other public comment in the room? All right, is there any public comment on Zoom? Any public comment on Zoom? All right, seeing none, I will move to item 10, which is selectmen updates. So, just a reminder, we have a joint meeting coming up Monday for the Emergency Services Radio Project and HVAC project with the Board of Finance.
Is that 7 o'clock?
That is 7 o'clock, yes. I just want to thank everyone who came out for our unveiling of the Global War on Terror memorials, the new ones at the Veterans Memorial Park. It was a great event, and I just want to thank the Veterans Expansion Committee for all the work once again.
Great job.
I want to thank the schools, especially Assistant Superintendent Michelle Zawalwi for organizing our second year for Veterans Day programs at all 4 schools. If you guys ever have some time off and see a captive audience and a lot of great energy, it's not only one of these programs. Budget season is coming up, so please let me know if you have any recommendations or requests. Start meeting with our department heads at some point towards the end of January.
When do you start?
We're going to start sending out their worksheets the next couple weeks. I've got 5 expiring collective bargaining agreements, so we'll be starting that up. It'll be a long 6 months. As a reminder, we have Suffield Light on December 6th, so hope to see you guys on Town Green. And finally, I just want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving and happy holidays.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You guys have anything you want to share?
No, I would agree with you, and I was at the ceremony for the, it's not an unveiling, what's it called?
It was an unveiling of the
It's an
new
unveiling, is
memorial.
that what you do? It was very lovely.
It was.
They put a lot of work in it, it's very quite touching, and it's nice that there's space over time, unfortunately, to add more if necessary.
All right. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Okay. Got 1 hour.
Yeah.